Hello and welcome to Top of Mind, Florida. I'm Michael Williams.
And I'm Brian Crowley, and I have a little thought for you today.
Okay.
You know, I have a brother who's a fantastic artist. I have a son who's a fantastic artist, yet I can't draw a straight line without a ruler. But we have somebody here that can explain all that.
We have somebody who is a cultural font of knowledge for us today. We're so happy to have Dave Lawrence, President and CEO of the Cultural Council for Palm Beach County. Thanks for joining us today.
I'm happy to be here.
I'm quite sure you can draw some straight lines for us today. We appreciate you being our guest here on Top of Mind, Florida. Talk a little bit about place set for our viewers and listeners before we jump into some of the policy challenges you're facing, but give us a setup about Cultural Council, its reach, the breadth of what it does. Talk about some of the fun, interesting things you do for our viewers who may be unaware.
Absolutely. So we are a local arts service agency, which means everything we do is designed to lift up, support, build the capacity of professional artists that live and work here in Palm Beach County, and also cultural organizations. Easiest way to think about us is sort of a chamber of commerce for the arts. And we were established in 1978 by Alex Dreyfus as a calendar of events. That's how the Cultural Council got started. And we've grown over the years. In fact, the Cultural Council was the organization that got the bed tax program started in Palm Beach County. And so that's a big part of what we do is reallocate dollars through the Tourist Development Council. We also do a lot of cultural tourism marketing. We have a whole array of artist services, not to make artists better painters or dancers or singers, but to help them be better small business owners, because that's what artists are. So all of that work exists to lift up and support the cultural sector and increase the quality of life here in Palm Beach County.
You touched on it a bit. Go a little bit more in depth on some of the iconic projects and organizations that have benefited from that vision, that work, that ongoing work.
Sure. So we have two grant categories that are funded through the Tourist Development Council, and this supports marketing and cultural tourism programs of our cultural organizations. And when I say cultural organizations, I mean the gamut from the Norton Museum of Art and the Kravis Center to the Palm Beach Zoo and Loggerhead Marine Life Center and the Historical Society of Palm Beach County and on and on. So it's history, it's science, it's community-based organizations that have cultural programs. And so that grant program, we're going to reallocate about $7 million this year for marketing cultural tourism. And these are for groups to advertise outside of Palm Beach County, to spread the word about the incredible cultural sector we have here, and to get them to bring more residents and more visitors here to Palm Beach County to enjoy all of that. We have at our headquarters in Lake Worth Beach 3 different gallery spaces. So we have a year-round exhibition schedule to promote and support and actually provide a venue for artists to show their wares and sell work at our gallery in Lake Worth Beach. So we're all about promoting artists through these programs. One of the programs that I'm really proud of is our Artist Innovation Fellowship. So we've offered 3 rounds of this program, and it's money that is given directly to artists just to do whatever's next to take their career to the next level, to celebrate innovation and creativity here in Palm Beach County.
So what got you interested in the arts?
My parents. I have always been in and involved with the arts. I'm a cellist myself, an actor, singer, director, done all that as I was growing up.
Growing up in Indiana?
In Indianapolis, Indiana, yeah. I was born in Kokomo, Indiana, which is just north of Indianapolis, but shortly after I was born, we moved down to Indy. So the arts have always been a part of my life.
What's your earliest memory of mom and dad sort of helping spur that seed, that interest?
So my neighbor who lived behind me, her dad was the executive director of the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra.
Wow.
And I remember very clearly, I must have been in 1st or 2nd grade, we got to go to a rehearsal at the big performing arts hall there in Indy called Clues Hall. And I walked in and I saw the musicians and they were in jeans. And that blew me away that these are real people. You know, they don't wear these, penguin suits all the time, right? And just this notion that these people are, they stopped and they had a Diet Coke beside them and they're taking a drink. I thought, my gosh, that could be me someday, you know? And so that has always stuck with me, that these are real people making this incredible art and incredible music. And so that gave me a lot of hope and sort of ambition to do this kind of work.
And as you inspire young artists, talk about the arc of your life and career that brought you to this point. Now heading to Cultural Council, take us through the rest of that story as you inspire. And then we'll talk about some of the policy challenges that are making you perspire these days and many others. But for now, let's be upbeat for a moment as we talk to our audience across Florida about that arc of your story.
Right. So I went to DePaul University, a small liberal arts school in Greencastle, Indiana. And I thought I was going to go into advertising at that point, still acting and doing all that sort of stuff. And I did a semester off campus in Philadelphia. So I lived in Philly for the semester and then some after that. And I worked for Electric Factory Concerts, concert promoter in Philadelphia. They're the ones that did Live Aid in the late 80s. And all of a sudden, there was this marriage of arts and entertainment and like real work, right? And so I thought, this is it. This is what I want to do. So when I graduated, I started working for performing arts centers and worked for a number of institutions in Indianapolis, including Indianapolis Opera, Indianapolis Symphonic Choir, et cetera, and got a call in 1999 to go work for the Arts Council of Indianapolis. And was there in a variety of capacities for 19 years and ended up the last 10 as CEO. And during that time, I brought the former director of the Cultural Council to Indianapolis to serve on a grant panel for us. And she said, well, turnabout's fair play. So I came down here in 2013 and served on a grant panel and fell in love with it. And lo and behold, 5 years later in 2018, I'm down here now leading the Cultural Council and getting to enjoy this phenomenal cultural scene we have here.
Not just blue jeans, but flip-flops and beachwear.
That's exactly right. Add that to the repertoire as well.
To enjoy that. You know, you hear such passion in your voice. You're obviously born with it, but I would imagine a lot of that passion, the wellspring for it, is also what you've seen. You've been able to create and allow others in their platform and do that. Because I hear that, I feel that when you talk.
That's the most important thing for me, is I got an appreciation for how difficult this kind of stuff is, right? By trying it myself. And so my whole goal is to get out of the way and to let the artistic process happen and honor those people who have so much talent and creativity they just can't keep it inside. And so that's really how I've built my career, is just creating the opportunity, tending the soil, creating those opportunities to let artists and cultural organizations thrive and connect to people, because that's what they do. It's magic when it happens, and to see it from people that have so much talent and creativity, I'm awed by it all the time.
We have many great cultural venues in Palm Beach County, South Florida, throughout Florida. What are we missing?
Ooh, that's a good question. We're really fortunate to have incredible institutions in all artistic genres. I'd like to see more dance. Here in Palm Beach County, we've got some great ballet companies, Ballet Palm Beach, the Boca Ballet, et cetera. There are some fledgling contemporary companies as well. I'd like to see some really good contemporary dance happen.
What's the struggle?
Funding a lot, and building an audience and finding a venue and all those things that small and emerging organizations struggle with all the time.
And that leads us to a topic that's not fun to talk about, but necessary, that's affecting you, concerns you, and your colleagues around the state of Florida, I might add. You've talked eloquently about what you're doing in Palm Beach County, but obviously your vision and that of your colleagues extends to what our partners are doing across our great state. $32 million in arts funding cut last year. Then this year there's been talk about restoring $26 or $27 million of it. We're in the middle of a huge budget fight right now. Talk about the health of your organization, the challenges, the concerns about the funding I just laid out, and the real world concerns it's creating right now.
So I think it's important to state off the bat that I'm one of those people that believe that there is a role for government to play in funding arts and culture, because arts and culture are such a part of our lives. They are a way that we come together in good times and not, right? I remember back at 9/11, the very first thing that happened that day, all of the House and senators came out on the steps of the Capitol and they sang. That is how they began dealing with that crisis. They used the arts as a way to deal with the enormity of what was happening. So I don't think we can ever lose sight of the fact of just the importance that arts play in our lives. And I think that government has a role to support that work. So have been fortunate and then not fortunate in the last few years with the Florida legislature in terms of supporting arts and culture. Last year's veto was a shock to the cultural sector. It put us back to number 50 in terms of state support for the arts.
50.
We were dead last. Zero funding from the state government coming to arts and culture. And that doesn't send a great message across the country and across the world about the value and the importance that is placed on arts and culture here in Florida. So, I have to say that we had great support from both House and Senate on both sides of the aisle fighting for that funding, and a budget was approved and it was vetoed at the last minute. There were attempts to try to override that veto that ultimately fell flat. So we find ourselves here this year trying to, we're getting caught up in the culture wars again.
Describe that for those unfamiliar. When you say caught up, go a little
so
more into
the veto happened because of two fringe festivals, one in Orlando and one in the Tampa area, I believe. That I don't think there was a clear understanding of what that funding was going to support for those organizations. And so the entirety of the funding was eliminated for that.
And that was
So,
statewide. 32
statewide.
million, I think
32
it was.
million across the state.
That was vetoed.
Yeah.
There was no real logic to it.
No, and it was really disappointing because I think if there had been some conversations about those two institutions in particular, and in fact, I was on one of the grant panels that reviewed those grants. They were funding arts education programs for kids in schools, not some of the programs that the
Part of the culture war.
yeah.
this section. The governor at the time was talking about fringe festivals, as you said, like quoting him here, a sexual festival,
Yeah.
all this stuff, quote. And so that led to a broad state of Florida cut in all the funding for everybody
Right.
across the board.
So what that meant, if we think about that, because he disagreed with what two organizations were doing, not funded through this grant, but what they were doing,
Sure.
that meant no after-school arts education enrichment programs. No programs that were happening in schools, in churches, in parks and neighborhood centers and all that sort of stuff. Those are usually, unfortunately, the first programs that get cut when major cuts like this happen. And what we saw through this in Palm Beach County is the smaller the organization, the larger the impact to the groups. I heard some that were, 30 or 35% of their entire operating budget gone in a flash because of that. So I was really worried. And this on the heels of COVID, right? When organizations were really struggling to come back and find funding and their footing again and rebuild their audiences. And then this happened. So we were most hopeful coming into this year and had a really good advocacy plan in place to get that funding restored. And then there have been more, I'll call them shenanigans as we're looking at this. As it stands, there are 13 organizations in Palm Beach County that are recommended for funding if this new legislation goes through.
Which was about 26 or 7 million, but it's sitting there in the middle of a budget fight. Am I correct on the number?
Yeah, but that's for the entire state.
Okay, yeah.
So less than
Parses
3
out
million.
pretty quickly.
Yeah, less than 3 million would be coming to Palm Beach County instead of 50 to 60 organizations that received funding 2 years ago. It's 13. So for the majority of organizations in Palm Beach County, that will be 2 years without state funding. This on the heels of what the federal government is doing with elimination of the National Endowment of the Humanities and the severe cuts and, in all likelihood, elimination of the National Endowment for the Arts. So federal and state funding is being eliminated, and this could be devastating to cultural organizations. And that's just the arts funding. The other battle we're fighting is around tourist development tax dollars. There is a bill that was going through. I don't know where it stands. We're waiting to hear what's going to happen. That would eliminate all tourist development councils across the state of Florida. And that means all of those tourism dollars that we use for marketing and cultural tourism to help bring visitors to Palm Beach County are in direct threat right now as well.
Do you think that the average voter in Florida understands what's happening to the cultural atmosphere of the state, because there seems to be kind of an overall silence about it. Why do you think that is?
I think, first of all, it's very complicated. We spend a lot of time just trying to make sure that the cultural organizations understand the legislation and the bills on both sides, that, where it's coming from and what the threats are. It's complicated, right? The arts, I've struggled with this my entire career. The arts are always the easy political football. We are the low-hanging fruit. When somebody wants to make something happen, they'll cut the arts first. That's just what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
Is it a messaging issue? Because let me give you an example and see what you think.
Right.
When they started to go after state parks, Jonathan Dixon, and wanted to put golf courses and hotel, people went nuts all over the state. They couldn't get rid of that fast enough to appease everybody. Is there a messaging issue for the arts community where they're not able to kind of get that same kind of anger, if you will, that there was over a threat to the state parks?
No, I don't think that's it. I think from the cultural side and from our fierce and loyal donors and audience members and all that, they're ready to take the pitchforks and the torches wherever they need to go. Right? They're ready to do that. Yeah. I think it's important, though, especially like we're in last year's environment when the veto happened. We had legislators on both sides of the aisle approve funding, and it was ready to go, right? So beating up on those people who approved the funding was not the prudent thing to do at that point, right? I think the overall problem, and why the arts always become this political football is a lot of people feel like they don't understand the arts. And so it's an easy thing to get rid of. It's a nice to have, not need to have, right? And I think that's where our messaging problem lies, and not in with the people that support and love the arts, but in those that have not given an opportunity to sort of infect their lives like it has the rest of us.
Talk here in this forum. Why do we need to have it? And talk about outside of, for those who just intrinsically love what it provides them in that moment, that space, why we need it in the broader context of our community and our state.
There is so much research on what the arts can do to young brains in terms of development, in terms of learning, in terms of cognitive ability, in terms of social interaction, in terms of creating self-discipline and self-awareness and all of those things. There are countless studies about that. If we look into our communities, what the arts do in terms of, if you look at public art and outdoor performances, they lower crime, they enhance streetscapes. Then we look further into the business community, how the arts can help with spur innovation. They can spur new partnerships and opportunities for growth. All of those things that sort of feed into this quality of life, those are all things that the arts bring us, in addition to being a really wonderful way to spend a Friday night, right? Mm-hmm. There's all sorts of things that it does for our communities and our environment and the lives that we choose to build. So it gets caught up into this. And I've had legislators say to me before, the arts are non-essential. And I said, tell that to the singer that has to sing in order to breathe, or the dancer that just has to do this because it's just oozing out of their body, right? Mm-hmm. We can't lose that that notion that for some people it is essential.
That's right? Probably coming from the same legislature who got in their car and turned on the radio to listen to music. But
that's right. And think about COVID. Think about how we all got through that. Watching Netflix, watching movies, reading books. That's all the arts, folks.
Yep, and at a time when we need young minds to have that kind of positive stimulation. We had a recent guest, we're talking about the AI revolution, that whatever else you'll say, we worry that we become kind of rote creatures or pressing buttons. We're not thinking, we're not creating, we're not looking as in that visionary way. And it speaks to all of that, as you eloquently are. And
speaking of AI, may I?
You may.
Okay.
We're big on manners here today.
I said, I can't draw a straight line without a ruler. Will AI help me do that? And what's the impact of AI going to be on the arts?
That's a really interesting question. We're all trying to figure that out right now. There are so many different things to consider where AI comes into play. I think nothing can ever surpass that human interaction between audience and actor, or painter and viewer, right? What the computers can probably do is great, but we're humans, and that humanity comes out through the arts. So there will probably be ways that AI and technology can greatly enhance our opportunities to deliver the arts in new ways and to engage with people in new ways. But I don't ever want to discount what human actors and singers and dancers and all that can do through the arts.
And you don't want legislators who say, oh, well, AI can take care of that. There's the human component there. So you don't want to create another headache for yourself.
So a few months ago, I used a music program, AI, and I took a poem I'd written when I was a kid and took a couple of lines from that and said to it, basically create a song. And 10 seconds later, not only did it create these incredibly good lyrics, but the song and the singer, I mean, I was just stunned by how good it was. And I'd only put in like 2 sentences. Am I a creator? No, it's just sort of a serious AI
creator,
question.
maybe.
But the original idea came out of my head.
Right.
It was basically about the moon sadly looking down on the earth. Did AI make me a creator? Does AI open the door for people to be creators who perhaps couldn't draw by themselves, but have an idea?
Right.
Who can't write? I can't write music, but I had an idea for some. Does that make me a creator?
Here's the thing that I think is really great about that is it allowed you to explore creativity in a new way, right? And I think that's really important. I think that I encourage people to, whatever their personal creative practice might be, to explore it, right? A lot of people took up a new hobby during COVID because they were going crazy, and so that's an opportunity to do that. I used to play around a lot with video editing software and made, really cool movies of vacations and all that stuff that I had taken and all that. And I thought, I am now a film editor, right? So yeah, I mean, if there's opportunities for you to explore, if you're writing through poetry and set that to music and all of that, I think that's wonderful. I wouldn't say you're probably ready for
creator status.
Yeah.
He's crestfallen.
But does that mean AI? But is that an example of AI opening a door? Is it to?
I think so, because you never know where it's going to take you.
I mean, if you
right?
were blind,
but the deeper
and you wanted to paint, and you could use AI to paint something for you, and it's all coming out of your head. I don't know. Does that make any sense? I mean,
this is getting really philosophical here. Wow,
he's really into AI.
We're very artistic, aren't we?
But the question to me then becomes, at what point AI, and then we'll kind of bring it full circle here as we wrap in the next few, is when is AI the facilitator for your creativity, and when does the paradigm shift where you're now simply the facilitator for its creativity, and where's the human component, all of that?
I think we're beginning to see that in movies and some of the things that are coming out. Like, I can't remember, I saw something where there is a video or something that is using an AI version of Darth Vader's voice or something. And now there's uproar from SAG and AFTRA and all of this stuff about, wait a second, that is glomming on to somebody's intellectual property, somebody's work that they created. Yeah. So I think that's where it sort of crosses the line. If it can enhance what we're doing or maybe lead to a new creative direction, I'll say tentatively, I think right now, that's a good thing, right? We'll have to see long term what the impact
on your list of ponderables. We've just given you some new ones today.
Absolutely.
In our remaining moments, your thoughts, you've talked about funding fights, you've talked eloquently throughout about the place arts should have, and it's sad to me that we even have to have that discussion in the year 2025 about the place they occupy in our lives in terms of inspiration and the like. But your closing thoughts about what keeps you fighting the good fight, where you see us going in the near and midterm and long term, and your final thoughts, your final top of mind thoughts on this podcast.
Well, I'll give you an example, a real life example that happened to me that drives me to this day to do this work and will always drive me. And that is, many years ago, we put together a visual art exhibition for the blind. Now that sounds kind of weird, right? But you think about, you go into galleries, you go into museums, you're not supposed to touch anything, right? This whole exhibition was created for people to touch, and we worked with blind organizations and organizations that worked with blind individuals to place them in jobs and all that stuff. So this exhibition was created for this, using Braille. All the artwork was designed to be touched or whatever. And my habit was always standing right near the door as people came in. And a woman came in with a guide dog, and I thought, okay, this is interesting, right? And I stepped back and watched her come in to the first painting. And she moved her hand up and put her hand on the painting. There was some Braille in the painting. And I saw this smile come across her face. And that moment, I could tear up right now just thinking about that. That moment, I witnessed somebody interacting with an artist in a way that I made happen, that my organization made that connection that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And so that moment, that face lighting up drives me. So ways that we can work, regardless of political affiliation, regardless of where you live or who you love or anything, to create opportunities for people to engage in the arts and to see their lives better because of it, that's what I fight for every single day. And that's why the Cultural Council exists.
Well, Dave Lawrence, on that eloquent note, we can only say thank you for being a guest on our podcast today. Dave Lawrence, President and CEO of the Cultural Council for Palm Beach County. And a final Crowley closer moment before we sign off, sir.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Dave.
Really appreciate it.
Our culture is so vitally important, not just in Florida, but throughout the world. And, and I would encourage people to go to the Cultural Council headquarters in Lake Worth. They have a wonderful gallery there where they show some wonderful art exhibits. And you guys do a really great job, and I wish you the best of luck in the future.
Thanks so much.
Thanks
Thank you.
for fighting the good fight. It's an inspirational one. And that's it for Top of Mind Florida. Thank you, as always, for being with us.